Welcome, Swagatham, Vanakkam. In this video, we examine a question of much significance. The question centers on a paradoxical statement made by Jesus. Jesus said, "Abide in me, and I in you." I do not know what sort of understanding of this statement by Jesus prevails in our midst. I have not heard many satisfying explanations or interpretations of this verse. At the same time, the statement has always intrigued me to the point of haunting me. Therefore, it's only natural if I have expended a lot of thought on the statement and attempted in my own humble ways to unpack the meaning of this statement. And what I propose to do is to share with you the fruits of my endeavors, hoping that this would make some sense in your experience, in your understanding, and in your life as well. Now, when something other than us gets inside of us or gets into us and lodges itself in us, I'm not here using the expression abide in, I'm using the more familiar expression lodges in. We call that a foreign body. I remember many instances in which thorns got stuck in my flesh. So those thorns were foreign bodies in relation to my own body, which is a part of myself. And to the extent that they were foreign bodies, they created a lot of discomfort. And discomfort announces or reminds us of incompatibility between the two. Or to put it more simply, it's the proof that that which has lodged itself in our body is not meant to be there. It's not meant, if you like, to abide in our body. So that's one possibility. A foreign body lodges itself in us, in our flesh, in our body, and causes discomfort. Rather than serve as a means of empowerment, it becomes a source of disempowerment, disability, etc. In contrast to this, Jesus says, "I will abide in you. And if I abide in you, you will produce much fruits. Your life will be fruitful, or you will have life in its abundance, or life in all its fullness." And Jesus equates that blessed state with the state of being fruitful in our life. By the way, the symbolism of being fruitful indicates that our worth is to be measured in terms of the beneficial impact we have on others. Our worth is not to be measured in terms of what we own for ourselves. Even if I'm a billionaire and I live for myself, spiritually speaking, I'm a pauper, I'm a beggar, because I'm always taking things from others and giving nothing in return. And my existing in the midst of people and my dying are just the same for those in need. And therefore, I am a beggar or a pauper. Now, Jesus says that my abiding in you will have an effect completely contrary to the effect that a foreign body, when it lodges itself in you, creates. And what is the difference? And it's very interesting and I believe useful to be clear about this difference. Now, the reason why a foreign body is a foreign body and the foreign body remains a foreign body even after it lodges itself in our bodies is that these objects, no matter what they are, lack the capacity for self denial altogether. Now, for example, after surgery, surgeons stitch up your wounds with what's called catguts. In olden days, instead of catguts, threads used to be used. And after surgery, maybe a week after the surgery, you had to report at the OPD for the removal of the sutures. But with the shift from thread to catguts, that process has become unnecessary because catguts get absorbed into the body. In other words, unlike the threads, cotton threads, catguts can cease to be foreign bodies. In the beginning, they are foreign bodies, but over a period of time, the body gets used to it and becomes one with it, and therefore it ceases to be a foreign body. The foreignness of what was the foreign body disappears, and the catgut's use become one with our body. Uh, Now, whether it is that the catguts has certain properties, the property, shall I say, of self-denial, which makes this possible, or whether it is the peculiar potency of the body which is applicable only to catguts, I do not know. I wouldn't be surprised if catguts has that particular potency, that possibility, and I'm inclined to believe that that's what makes it possible, together with the capacity of the body to adjust to catguts, that makes this assimilation possible, which completely overcomes the foreignness of the catguts thus used. Now, when Jesus says that he will abide in us and allow us to abide in him, a reciprocal relationship of mutual abiding in, and that will result not only in a normalcy, not only that it does not threaten your life, but that it enhances your life to the point of your becoming fruitful. Your worth gets intensified, your worth increases by several fold, which means that Jesus is akin to us. And therefore, we have to understand the nature of that akinness, the quality of being akin, or the reality of being akin. In what sense? Now, Jesus is presented by John as the Logos. And John also points out that Jesus was the principle of creation, the agent of creation. Nothing was created that was uh, nothing that was created but by the Logos, by Jesus. Logos is then identified by Jesus. So, the reality, the life principle that operates in us, on account of which we are living creatures, living beings, is actually the Jesus principle. And therefore, Jesus is not a foreign body, Jesus is the real self of a believer. And therefore, when the real self comes into us, our self gets intensified. Now, if Jesus were only a self like us, then his abiding us will not intensify our potential and lead us to life in abundance. The Jesus abiding in us can have this beneficial potential of intensified scope, enlarged scope, only because Jesus is our real self. And we are actually the mirror images of Jesus. So, in other words, we are the appearances of Jesus. But appearance has the potential to become the real. Um, Perhaps we are like, the situation may be compared to your standing in front of a mirror. It is an inadequate analogy, but still, this might make it somewhat clearer. Then there are two selves, the real you and the mirror image you. Suppose there is a condition in which the two become one. Then, if the mirror image is a superior version of you, then you will gain from it. If the mirror image is an inferior version of you, then you will lose on account of it. That's why I say that Jesus abiding in us, resulting in life in its abundance, means that Jesus is the real self. Now, going back to the mirror image. In the case of the mirror image, suppose you merge with the mirror image. Then the mirror image gains a great deal because you are the real self. So, any intensification of worth, any enhancement of life, any increase in the relevance, scope, potencies, etc., of an individual means that he has been now united with something about yourself which is far superior to what you have been up to that point in time. Otherwise, your worth, your potency will be reduced. So, Jesus is making a very, very profound and very daring claim that he is the real life. That's why Jesus said, I am the life. It is in this sense that I understand Jesus' statement as found in the 6th verse of the 14th chapter of John's Gospel, where he says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am the real life. And going back to the book of Genesis, to the account of the creation of Adam, Adam was shaped out of the dust of the earth, and he was not a living being. God breathed into Adam, and he became a living soul. So, the breath of God. Jesus is that breath of God. That breath of God is the Logos, which is the vital life principle that is the reason that everything in the world exists, everything in the cosmos exists. I say that again. Jesus is the breath of God, the vital principle, the reason why life exists and everything exists anywhere at all. It is in this sense that John introduces Jesus, and I'm inclined to take that as a fundamental article of my belief. Now, if something is to abide in you, which is the second part of my argument, if something is to abide in you and not choke you as a foreign body does, for example, if you eat carelessly, if you eat bony fish carelessly, you incur the risk, the avoidable risk, if you're careful, of some bone or the other getting lodged in your throat. That causes intense misery because that's not the place for a bone to be lodged. There is utter incompatibility between your throat and the bone that you have allowed to get itself lodged there. And your relief will come only when that source of irritation or that source of intense discomfort is removed from there by some means or the other. But the impact that Jesus has when he abides in us, he says, is completely different. The impact, the outcome is that you become fruitful, not miserable. You don't get incapacitated. Your life does not get endangered. Now, therefore, Jesus, the real self, here I am actually using Advaitic concepts, as those who are familiar with Advaitic philosophy would recognize. Jesus, the real self, makes the claim that when I abide in you, will not cause any discomfort or threaten the integrity of your life because it is in my nature to deny myself. It is in my nature to deny myself. Only that which has the capacity to deny itself can lodge within you without causing either discomfort or a threat to your survival. So, the most essential attribute of the real self is the capacity for self denial. Now, self denial is that capacity by which something can reside inside of you and at the same time so deny itself that you become completely unaware of you. And therefore, when that phenomenon, that particular thing, that particular person who has perfected the capacity for self denial abides within you, what happens? You become completely unaware of it. That's the reason why we are unable to realize, feel, experience, become conscious of the Jesus within us. But Jesus is within us. What's my basis for saying so? My basis is chapter 5 of Matthew's Gospel, verses 14, 15, 16, where Jesus says that there is light within you. No one lights a candle and puts it under a bushel, but on the candle stand, that it may give light to all in the house. So there is light within you. The only thing is that it is now covered by a contrary principle, a principle contrary to the nature of light. The nature of light is that it is a continuous outward flow and it flows out in order to illumine the world and to reveal the goodness of the world around you. But that light is today hindered. So the presence of Jesus as a light within us is hindered by a contrary principle, which it is possible for us, if we so desire, to remove. And the removal of that contrary principle, principle contrary to light, is actually the principle of transformation. So in transformation, the dynamics of transformation is that the principle or the orientation or the nature contrary to the light principle or the true self principle or the Jesus principle is removed, so that the present disrelationship, the present disharmony between the true life principle or the Jesus principle and our self, in other words, our own true self and our mistaken self, become one. And as a result of the restoration of our self to its true self, it achieves an incredible, miraculous enhancement of possibilities, riches, powers, relevance, and fruitfulness. That is the secret of blessedness in life. Now, let's connect this to a statement by Paul in his letter to Corinthians. Paul says, "Know ye not, don't you know, that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit?" Now, the Holy Spirit is the Spirit of Jesus after his physical presence has ceased upon the earth. So, the presence of Jesus continues only as the Holy Spirit. So, according to Paul, our body is the temple of the Holy Spirit. It is exactly the same as Jesus saying, "Abide in me and I in you." So, the Holy Spirit abiding in us should be seen as symmetrical with or as equivalent of Jesus abiding in us. So, when Jesus was upon this earth, humanity was the temple of Jesus, provided members of the human family voluntarily, freely accepted him. There is no coercion or force in the realm of spirituality, it's the realm of pure freedom. Therefore, people have to voluntarily and freely, gladly accept that vital life principle to experience this enhancement of their true self. After that, it is not the physical presence of Jesus, it's not the abiding in of Jesus in the physical form, but the abiding of Jesus in the spiritual form via the Holy Spirit. Now, the Holy Spirit abides us in the same manner that Jesus envisaged. And therefore, if the Holy Spirit abides in us, we experience an enhancement and intensification of our spiritual powers. And that can have miraculous outcomes. But it's not the miraculous outcome that is important, it is the reality that your true self has been quickened, as a result of which various things might happen. Miracles may or may not happen, but miracles happening is only incidental. It is not the ultimate thing. It is like a bud in nature opening and becoming a flower. It's not, we don't see it as something miraculous, it's something natural. So when the Holy Spirit abides in us, we do not ever become aware of anything as miracles. We become aware of all tremendously significant and extraordinary events as a natural way of doing things, a natural way things happen. Actually, when the Holy Spirit comes into a human being, miracles die. The idea of miracle disappears. And therefore, those who go around as merchants of miracles, they have nothing to do with the Holy Spirit. Truth to tell, they are deceivers, frauds, cheats who are out to take people for a ride to fill their pockets because they know people are foolish and that they can practice their crookedness, and they agreed upon the susceptibilities of the people because they are not spiritually enlightened. Those who are enlightened know that there are no miracles. At least they will not see anything as a miracle. For example, Jesus did not see water turning into wine as a miracle. To him, it was a natural thing to happen. Jesus did not see the eyes regaining their sight, the lame walking, lepers being cleansed, even the dead being raised as miracles. He never uses the word miracle. He said, your faith has made you whole. And if you have faith, you as large as a mustard seed or as small as a mustard seed, you can move mountains. This is the sense in which Jesus makes those statements. So, there's the profound implications of Jesus' statement, abide in me and I in you, must be understood in terms of the many ramifications. And these echoes of the meanings are scattered through the body of Jesus' teachings. And therefore, unless we connect this particular statement to the entire body of Jesus' teaching, we will not be able to arrive at a proper and adequate, truthful, spiritually valid understanding of Jesus' words. So, Jesus is the light of the world. That light abides within us. Matthew chapter 5, verses 14 to 16. And we are therefore the light of the world. Matthew chapter 5, verse 14. And when we are the light of the world, we are a new creation, as Paul says, 2 Corinthians 5:17. And as Jesus says to Nicodemus, you have to be born again. Being born again means being shifted to or being transformed into a new potency of existence, denoted as life in its fullness, the secret of which is Jesus abiding in us. And Jesus is the life principle, is the light of life. And because he is the life principle, he is our own true self. And because he is our true self, there is no incompatibility between Jesus and us. The reason why Jesus can abide in us to the effect of intensifying our scope, our meaning, and our worth. Otherwise, would have been choked to death. And that is because Jesus has this profound capacity, which is not native to the flesh or fallen human nature, the capacity for perfect self denial. And it's because of this tremendous capacity, which does not come naturally to human beings, capacity for self denial, that paradoxically we are unaware of the Jesus principle within us when he fills our inner life simply because he denies himself. If Jesus had filled us from within without the capacity for self denial, we would have become intensely and hauntingly aware of it, and there would have been no margin left for denying Jesus. Peter could not have denied Jesus if Jesus had not the capacity to deny himself. So, this is roughly my present understanding of Jesus' teaching, that the secret of being fruitful in our spiritual life, and therefore the secret of attaining blessed life, is Jesus abiding in us and he abiding in us and we in him. This is admittedly a somewhat complicated state of affairs. I have to apologize that I do not know how to explain this idea in any way simpler than this. Maybe if I were a little more spiritually developed, my explanation would have been simpler, but I don't claim any such perfection. Therefore, I have to conclude by requesting each one of you to work further along these lines, to ponder, to reflect, just as Mary treasured the words of Gabriel, continue to meditate on them so that those words became part of her own being. I can only conclude by requesting each one of you to treasure these things, to continue to reflect on them so that you attain far greater clarity that I have been able to provide, and also far greater clarity that I have achieved. And I submit these thoughts in humility, in hope, and in prayer, that this may enrich everyone who cares to listen and to uh, seek through the limited words that I've offered. Thank you and have a great time ahead, a great 2025, a period of life in all its abundance.